Hey guys,
What's up, Lucas?
Lucas,
how's it going?
it's going
You good?
amazing. How are we doing good, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm
Awesome,
doing
awesome.
good. Taking some notes here.
Yeah.
All right.
How was the last week, Lucas? I know you played around with some AI stuff, so I'm curious
Yeah,
to kind of hear about that.
it's crazy. Um, I'm building a bunch of automations. Like I'm building an army of AI agents to never work again in my life. Now I'm building a couple of AI agents to. I have a calendar agent, a RAG agent, which is like an agent that retrieves information from a database. Um, an agile coach agent, like the agile methodology, with it asks me 3 questions in the morning, like what did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? Do you have any blocker? Right? And it takes those notes and add those nodes to a database. Then another agent that when I have a node of a thought, an insight, something, I just put it in the Slack channel and it organizes the information. And again, it goes everything to the vector database. So I can go with the RAG agent and check, like retrieve all that information, right? I'm playing with that. Like what I want to build is a couple of agents to handle all those tasks and one master agent to handle all the rest, right? Something like that. That's that what I do have in mind. So for example, if I need to add a call to my, no say, I mean to my calendar, I just tell that to the agent, tell, hey, book a call with Mateus tomorrow 2 p.m. So the agent goes, call the calendar agent, and the calendar agent handles the rest.
Nice.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Awesome.
This stage that we are on tech. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. I'm doing all this with a no-code automation tool, which is called NAN. It's pretty awesome. Maybe you guys are familiar with that. It's
We
kind
also
of
shared
like,
something in the school group, Lucas.
yeah.
We also do have Paco and also Matt. What's going on, guys?
Not much. What's doing?
There we go. There we go. We made it.
Yep.
How's it going?
Yeah.
Where are you
Yeah.
based?
I'm based out of Florida, but I'm in Denver right now.
Oh, sweet. I'm in Boulder.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I'm out here until the 26th.
Nice.
Yeah,
Right on. Small world.
yeah, yeah.
Play a small world. Phil Paco's also he runs a pretty substantial team here as well. So he's definitely creative is a big area of interest for him as well here. So I'm really excited for you guys to be on the same call for sure.
It's huge.
Cool.
And Lucas, I was listening to the last creative call and I heard that you were working in debt settlement. If you ever need any advice on that, let me know. Before I got
Oh,
into media buying, I owned a debt settlement call center for about 10 years. So any insights that you need, happy to help. My friend also still owns one. He's got about 120 agents. So if you need a place to place leads or anything like that, I might be able to hook you up.
oh man, that's great.
Yeah,
Great to hear that, man. Amazing. Yeah, definitely. I
abs-
will send you a couple of messages.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Nice, nice.
There you go,
Glad to
Mateo.
hear.
That's what the community's all about.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
The
it's pretty
beauty.
great.
It is. It is. And what are your like your thoughts about debt settlement space now in the next upcoming days, with the years?
I mean, I think, with the state of our economy here, it's going to continue to grow.
Hmm.
Um, it's gotten more difficult over the years, but I think now you're going to see a lot more people falling into it because they want an alternative to bankruptcy. Um, I know that you were talking about people worried about their credit scores being affected, and like, yes, it will be affected, um, because in order to settle your debt, you have to fall behind at least 3 months, because the credit card agencies won't, lower your debt or anything like that if you're not behind on your payments. Now, with consolidation, it can help bring your score back up because they're really just giving you a loan. And a lot of times it's hard to do that because these people's debt to income ratio, like the amount of credit they have to the debt that they have, is so high they can't get a loan. So there are some debt settlement companies that are actually financing the settlement. So what they'll do is they'll let them fall 2 or 3 months behind. They'll actually give the person the loan and pay off the debt almost like a consolidation, and then they pay the debt settlement company back themselves. And that's like the new model that I'm seeing a lot of. Like Freedom Financial is doing that. Assurance is doing that. So, I think if you can find a company that does that, you'll see um, a lot more people being retained. Because what will happen is if they don't pay off their debt in a specific amount of time, the credit card companies will sue them. They'll garnish their wages, they'll levy their bank accounts, or they'll attach liens on their homes. So, and that was like one of the big problems with debt settlement initially, was like you couldn't pay things off fast enough. So now with the companies actually paying it off in a timely fashion, people are getting in and out really quickly, and it's getting a better name. So I think you'll see it grow over the next few years.
Interesting. Interesting. Great. Thanks.
Nice. Expert lead gen here.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I'm like super stoked about the creative classes, man. I'm like trying to figure out how to get my team to build creatives on scale and like on a schedule, and like the best way to test their creatives, um, in like a systematic format where we're not, everybody's doing it the same way. So I can actually have a case study to say, okay, well, this offer, we've tested these 7 angles, or, these 7 different iterations of that angle, and this is what's working. Let's spread that out amongst the team and start scaling faster.
So where do you feel that the system is not fully like built out yet?
So for us, like I've started having my guys like launch every Monday at least 15 new test creatives. Whether that's either they can test copy that week, or headlines, or images, or videos, whatever they want to test, but they have to have at least 15 to test. But I don't feel like my team is understanding how everything is working and how each iteration is working. And I don't know if I need to like build some sort of spreadsheet or some sort of database that can capture all of that information. We're currently working on a SaaS platform for media buyers. So that's one of the things that we're trying to build into the system, where we can like archive test, and like people can leave notes on the iteration, so you can go back and see what's working and what's not over time. But that's down the line in our roadmap, so it's going to be like 5 or 6 months before that can even see like an alpha test of that feature. So I don't really know the best way to do that. Like we're using ClickUp as like, these are the tasks that they need to do, but it's not, I don't find it to be the best way for like everyone to see what's been tested. Like it's not, I guess you have to click into the individual task, right? And there's no way to really see each individual image or creative or anything like that, to understand what was being tested. So I didn't know if you had a specific way that your team tests, and how you kind of go through that process with them.
Cool. Those are solid points. That's like advanced level right now. Like you've got the feedback loop running. It's just now the analysis side seems to be the crucial piece here.
Yeah, that's really what, like, that's one of the big reasons we built our SaaS platform, is like, how do we get that feedback? How do we understand what's actually working? And we have plans to obviously put AI into it, just like everyone else is putting AI into everything. But to tell us what's working, you know, and how do we make more of it.
Okay. That is a good thought. What else? Would you feel like there's anything else missing there? Like once you have, I guess in terms of when you're saying the team is launching 15 ads every Monday, do you have a preference as to what they want? You want them to be testing? You want them to be testing more creatives versus copy?
So I try not to micromanage them too much. But I guess I don't really have the best formula of like, when I test an image and it's working, or a video, do I now, like, sometimes I'll iterate on the video or image, but sometimes I'll move on and test, okay, well, this is a winning image. Let's test like 3 different copies and see which copy is the best, and then go to headlines. But should I continue testing new iterations of the image, or should I be testing different aspects of the whole creative? And I guess, you know, there's always always 100 ways you could do it, right? So like, I'm just trying to find like 1 or 2 that I can tell my guys, okay, well, this is something you can follow and you should see results by the end of the week. And those winners, after you spend X amount of dollars based on, you know, cost per lead, you know, if you've spent 3X, you know, our payout, and you're profitable, let's move that into a winning campaign, you know. Or should they continue to iterate on that until they spend 5 or 6X, and then that iteration that really is working, move that over into a winning campaign? And that's kind of like where I'm stuck, is like how to just structure the actual process for the team. Because we've been in business for 12 years, but like we don't really have any SOPs for anything. And like 7 of those years, it was just me as the only media buyer, really. And we had mostly affiliate traffic coming into our network. And now we're moving away from like a network to more of like an agency, where now we have 8 media buyers. And we're trying to do as much internally as possible. We still have a few like super affiliates that we work with, like 6 or 7. But we're really trying to do most of our traffic internally now.
Cool. Okay. I think I know where I want to start this. If it's cool with you, Lucas, Mateo, should we just do like a hot seat with Paco and we can build out the whole infrastructure right now? I can kind of show you the SOP that we have on how I do creative analysis, and I can share that in the school group as well. But after you kind of get the structure, then we can actually build it out in real time, which could be useful for Lucas, for you as well, and anyone else for watching the recording.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, so I'll first share one framework, and then so I kind of have like a thing built out, but I'll just focus on the one part here, which is I tried to, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Cool. So I tried to break down the entire kind of process of like the creative act per se into like an input, process, output, and feedback loop. And it seems like this is kind of the missing piece, because if you're just running it like this, right, you're going blind, you're just running it. You don't know what to do, when to do it. But the missing piece is the feedback loop. What's working? Why is it working? What do we ideate next? Should we ideate an iteration or a new concept? But everyone often is just like in a game of just volume versus you can do both quality and volume. So I don't think I need to kind of go over any of this stuff. Like we have I think we can just dive into like the creative analysis side, and I'll show you the frameworks there. And then we can just fill this in with Paco's content, and it'll make more sense than working off of this. But you guys can always go back to this as well. In general, just to give a high overview of like what the creative analysis is, it's just most people look at what happened and they stop there. It's just CPA 50, it's binary. CPA 50, work, didn't work, let me try again. But they don't look at why things happened and what to do next. And I tried to think like, how do you create a structure or a process there? Because the why did it happen? Sometimes it doesn't make any sense why things happened. That's the hardest part with the creative side is like things work or don't work.
Right.
And the way to solve it is it's not having the right answer, but having the least wrong answer. So then the problem becomes how do you get the least wrong answer? Well, that stems from how do you ask the right question? And let me know if you can see this.
I can see
Cool.
it.
So I'll share this doc with you guys after the call. But I tried to break down like what is a creative analysis and how do you determine creative direction? And this is kind of from the framework of an agency to a brand, but this can be, you know, internal brand or internal agency to team members. But if I would summarize it into one line, it's to interpret past data to inform future edits. And you want to find why what happened to give direction what you should do next versus here's what happened. And kind of that's a formula. Is like if you know what happened and why it happened, then you can determine what to do next. Otherwise, if you don't know why what happened, then you can't do the next thing. Kind of a riddle, but at the end of the day, it's going to be 3 parts. This is what everyone kind of does. Like you have Facebook apps that can like streamline this for you. Like most spend, least spend, high CPA, lowest CPA. For you would be maybe cost per lead or cost per appointment booked. But this is pretty straightforward. I'm assuming your team's already doing this stuff.
Yeah, we're looking at a lot of that. I mean, some of my guys, I think everybody's looking at everything a little bit differently, but this is generally what I look at is like thumb stop rate first, then hold rate second, CTR all, CTR, and then I look at cost per click, everything in the front end of the engagement interaction, and then I look to leads submitted, leads actually qualified, and then if we do have feedback loops with our clients, leads converted to deals on the back end.
Yep. And then what do you typically do after that, once you have that information?
So what I would usually do is I will take whatever creative that I was using, and then I will try to, if it's a video, I'll keep the same narration, and I'll have my creative team create variations of a video like that, not necessarily the same video, but say if it's like, you know, something for MVA and it's a car accident, and then a talking head, then I'll do the same thing with that same narration, right? And see if any variations of that do well. And then if those all hold strong, then I'll try to iterate on the body copy to see if I can find anything better there. If I can raise the CTR all, I'll just edit the first 2 sentences, because I generally find that, like, you know, the see more button is the main one that people are hitting. And if I can get them engaged enough to want to learn more about the product, then I know I'm onto something. And then I'll move on to the headline. And then from there, I'll just start scaling.
Okay, cool. You have a good base already. To kind of answer one of the questions you had earlier of like when do you choose between iterations and concepts? I think this is like there's no right answer, but for us it was there's this framework in the Toyota production method, which is like the 5 why system. Have you heard of this one?
No, I haven't.
It's kind of like to find the root cause of a problem. If you ask why 5 times, you get to the root. The problem is if you iterate too many times on the same creative, you lose the thing that you're iterating on. It just becomes a completely different ad. So for us, let's say the CPA target is 50. And then, you know, your CPA was like 58. If in this case, we wouldn't iterate, we'd build a new concept, and we do it based on the probability that if we're more than 10% off of from our CPA target, we'll have a higher likelihood of hitting our target by new concepts or new angles rather than little micro iterations, because they won't move the needle as much. But if we're actually within 10%, let's say we're at 54, we know that if we change a little headline, one of those will be incrementally better, maybe another 10% better. So now we're at a 53, 50, and we have more momentum. But if we're outside of the range of 10%, then we always make a new concept. So with that in mind, like that's kind of our approach to it. It just kind of keeps us out of this like never-ending feedback cycle of like you make a batch and you're outside of the range. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. And how long do you test for? Like if you're gonna let an iteration run, is it 3 days? Is it 5?
Typically, it depends on the volume and time. Volume as in spend and time as in days launched. At least 5 days preferably. And kind of we're an e-commerce, or we work mostly with e-commerce companies, so the CPAs will be a little bit different. Also, the conversion events are different, but we look at 1.5 times AOV as a spend. That's kind of our baseline per ad. So if we're spending $100, or if our CPA is $100, then we're willing to put in 150 per ad. That's kind of baseline. So it may happen quicker. Like if one ad spends in the first 2 days and it's out of KPI, we're gonna kill it. But generally, that's our like baseline.
Okay, that makes sense.
So okay, kind of keep going here. So this is what everyone typically does, and then the most important part is the why. And like everyone in marketing will tell you like the ADA stuff, and it's like cool. That's like the thumb stop and the hold rate and the click-through rate and like what's a CPA. At the end of the day, all we care about is that. Like as much as everyone says like worry about your thumb stop rates, I think people are looking at the wrong thing. I think it's just like does it convert or does it not convert? That pays the
Yeah.
bill. But then that leads to the question of like, well, how do you know what caused what? So I'm not going to go through all these questions, but I kind of pulled like what kind of questions come to mind when thinking about these things. Like if you want to improve the hook, like that's kind of the frameworks I would get into. And if there's a particular section you want to go into, I can do that with you. But in terms of like the like conversion events, I'm looking for patterns. I'm not looking for literal things. I'm like, what's happening across the things? Like when did things break? If the things that are working, when do they start working well? One thing I've noticed is people will do really well in holding the variables constant on like the creative side, same thumbnail, same copy, and then they'll do like one different variable in the video, but then do a different landing page. Completely derails the whole thing.
Right, right.
So it's like I'm trying to understand like when you have a headline, how does it compare to non-headline? When you have a headline with emojis or let's say problem in the headline, how does that compare to a statement? Things of that nature, like it's just patterns, and then the patterns will lead to the next step. But any questions on this?
No, that all makes sense. I mean, I teach my guys to only change one variable at a time. Otherwise, your test is going to be inconclusive. Um, but for like when you're talking about like changing one thing, how do you document that? So they understand it and they can look at it over like a week's period and say, okay, well, the headline with emojis worked better than the problem headline. Are you guys using like a spreadsheet to do that? Because I find the more side task I give these guys, the less they want to do it. So, I don't want to like give them a ton more work, like, oh, well, now you have to copy your image, your headline, and your body copy all into a spreadsheet if I don't have to. But I don't really know of another way to do it. And it'll be really tedious for them to put their daily metrics into a spreadsheet. But if that's the only way that it'll work and that'll get us to move that needle from, an average 40% ROI to 60%, I mean, that's worth it. We're spending big budgets. So, 20% increase is a lot of money.
Yeah, the problem so like the documentation here needs to be more scientific, like almost an experiment analysis, like you're logging things as they happen. I have a spreadsheet for that. I want to be careful what I show in a screen recording. I can do a call recording after the call and put this in with this document. Like, what is your
Okay.
process like? The thing is, I'm the one that's usually documenting all those things, and oftentimes, like, I might miss 1 or 2 days, and that can throw off the entire thing. So it is really tedious to do it, and I wish there was a better way to do it. But there's something about manually inputting things versus an AI documenting it for you, because you won't have that same level of like forensic analysis. Because if it's done for you, you won't care to see the patterns. Like when I was doing media buying before, I would have supermetrics just pipe everything into this, this master dashboard. And I noticed that I wouldn't look at it as much as I would when I was the one documenting it first thing at 8 a.m. in the morning. And I'm like, ooh, that was a bad day. Like that day did not do well. And I had to feel the pain of inputting it versus if an AI does it, it's just, we can just move on another day. So there's something to manually doing it. But it's a good question. Like, I don't think anyone does this well, the documentation. For
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, it's really tedious. I mean, we've got 26 ad accounts running right now. So like, you could see how like if I was doing it alone, that would be really, it would take up most of my morning, if not part of my afternoon.
Right. I wrote that down. Yeah, I'm gonna follow up on that one because that's something that I'm actively trying to solve right now. Yeah, I'll share that with everyone once I solve that.
Okay, cool.
So again, this is something that it's just more of the pattern recognition, like where then you lead into that next is like once you have an understanding of why things happened, this is like the person who is communicating with the media buyer or the editor. Typically, it's like a strategist role. You kind of determine the structure of like, what do you want to test next? That would be based on what was found in parts 1 and 2. Like a future pipeline of creatives, like that wouldn't be necessarily next, but it would create a Rolodex of, let's say, 3 to 5 ideas. And based on the data that you come back next week, you can readjust a priority off of them because new data coming in will readjust that. And oftentimes this is like the most important thing. It's like, what blockers do you have? For example, if you're running low in creative or if you need approval on something and you're going to miss your launch day, it's better to have that laid out in advance. So as soon as we deliver the product of the ads, we'll send this to people saying, here's what we're doing next. And we have a 2-week buffer of like, here's kind of what we're going to be working on and we need ahead of time. Because I can't expect people to give me certain assets within 2-day turnaround time. But if I have a buffer time and a margin of error, that's good. And then lastly, like since the beauty of like doing the analysis so detailed is you typically find things that most people overlook. So it's like you might notice an ad that was turned off that should have been turned on, and then you ask someone why it was turned off, and then they have no idea, they have no answer.
Right.
I just did this one thing. So it's kind of like looking where nobody else is looking to find things that nobody else saw. So, and now with all that said, like to make it actionable, like that's your key lever. Like if things are broken, that's kind of the iterations that we do. So typically like if the thumbnail or like people aren't stopping on the ad, I mean, the thumbnail is your biggest driver there, but the most important thing is like that thumb stop if you're going to talk about attention. And that's just like you said, the voiceover, visual, sound, copy used. Those are your biggest levers. And then depending on the product and the industry, it's going to be one or the other. Like more visual products may require more visuals to sell. So
Right. Now, with a thumb stop rate, where do you generally try to see your videos? Like what percentage
25% minimum.
minimum? Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of a good baseline. Like you'll have some outliers, maybe 32%, 40%, but oftentimes once you're at a higher rate, I found that those ads usually have less spend. So the more spend you put through to them, they're gonna kind of baseline to 25.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'll share this all with you guys. This was kind of just an overview of the whole system in terms of kind of what that analysis looks like completed. Like what I found is people just need an executive analysis. Like people don't want a full observation. They just want bullet points. So what I'll do is I'll just break down like how did this batch do relative to the baseline of the account. So as you can see, this was outside of that 10%. And within that poorly performing batch, what was the best ad of there? And when I mean best ad, it had like the most spend, most promising spend, but still out of KPI. And then I break down observations. These aren't actionable. They always start with like, I wonder if we did this, or like, here's what I saw, we like similar to this, like we should try it that way. And this is intended to give the client or the media buyer an idea of like where I'm coming from, what ideas maybe they have from their lens. Maybe they're like, yeah, we've tried candy and it doesn't work. And then I'd ask them why. And then it kind of creates a conversation. But my job is just like to kind of create questions, spark questions. You know, like on the call with Lucas last week, I was like, well, why aren't you doing this? I don't have the answer, but I know Lucas can figure it out because he has a process there. It's just the different question can get someone to think in a different way. And that's the most important part of this process.
Okay.
And then the action item is just like what I want to do next. Like I felt like I didn't go straight into the product and I had an example to articulate that. And then the headline was only visible for 3 seconds, whereas I felt like it should have been longer. And that was my test that didn't go well. So yeah, that's kind of like the approach that I've kind of like simplified there.
Okay. And so when you're testing, are you testing like 5 new creatives a week, or are you doing much more than that? Because I feel like we're at 15, there'd be so many variations for these guys that it may be overwhelming. And I may want to reduce the number of creatives they're using.
So what's the goal? You're trying to scale spend, obviously, right? So I guess the question stems from how much spend are you trying to fill at the moment? And that determines how many creatives you need to fill.
So for their testing campaigns, generally I have them spending 500 a day to 1,000 a day. And then on the scaling campaigns, it depends on the offer. Like our MVA, where our budget is $1 million a month. So, we have a lot of room there. So I want them to continually test as much as they can. That way, if anything, it's almost like an evergreen model where they're just constantly adding new things to the scaling campaign. And when something fatigues, they just turn it off and they still have 5 or 6 ads in there, running at $1,000 or $2,000 a day each.
Okay, and then within each batch of 15 ads, how many creatives are there? 5 iterations typically?
So they're doing essentially most of the guys are creating different videos. Everything else is staying the same. So they'll be, and they're doing it. They're not even really creating iterations. It's a completely different video, just with the same voiceover and copy and headline.
Which would still be an iteration, right? Because they're only changing one variable, just the video.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So each ad set, does it have 15 ads inside of there on that Monday, or is it?
No, generally I have them put no more than 5 ads in an ad set, and they'll do 3 ad sets, and then they're running those in a CBO. We've had some luck. I used to only test in an ABO structure, but we've been having some really good luck testing in a CBO and just moving the ones that rise to the top to the scaling campaign and then shutting those off. And then the next week, we'll let them run for 2 weeks. The winners obviously move to the scaling, we shut those off. And then the next week, we'll add the next set, but we'll leave the ones that didn't win to see if they can get some spin and rise to the top as well. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If they don't, we cut those the next week, and then we repeat the process so that it's always growing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so
I've only been testing that for like maybe 10 weeks. We've probably put 100K behind it, but it has been seeing good results.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like you have a solid system. Maybe it's just getting new concepts like net new angles in might be the lever that you're talking about. Because if you're saying you're doing the 15 ads, but you're just swapping out a single variable on each one, they might not be as diverse as like a completely different format or style.
So
Does that
by
sound
format, yeah, yeah. I mean, most of the formatting is just a single video with some cutscenes and things like that, some B-roll. We're not doing like a lot of split screens like you were talking about on the first creative session, and things like that. So like maybe that's something we would want to look into.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull this back up. Because there's a couple of things we can do here. It's like you can either go more volume, so you increase the capacity from 15 ads to 30 ads, and that means you have to ideate new ways to push that through. Or you keep the 15 ads in the same structure you're doing, but you make them different concepts rather than more iterations, because kind of what we do is, or I recommend people do rather, is you'd have those 5 ads. Let's say that's concept 1. And then your iteration is going to be within this one. So you have a completely different format or angle. I guess you want to give an example, we can just kind of run through it, like a live one. So who would be like the product, I guess, what's a product exactly? Just like
So we're working in motor vehicle accident right now, like personal injury attorney leads.
okay. And then target audience, is it people that have been injured in a motor
Yeah,
vehicle?
people that have been injured in a car accident within the last 2 years.
Okay. And then since you have a lot of data on this, is there a particular I guess let's break this down a bit more with people that are been injured. Is there a certain age that it's happening in?
Um, so we find that the best, like on the back end, people sign up the most age between like 35 and 50. Usually any younger than that, they'll like reach out to their parents, or their parents' friends have an attorney or something like that. They're not actually looking for themselves. And then they usually tend to be on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. The higher end generally know someone that's an attorney, and they or have an attorney already that they use.
Got it. And then kind of what this leads me next is like, I'm gonna call it like a use case, but is there a common, 1 or 2 common reasons people are calling about, like car accident in particular, or they're walking on the street and they got hit by a car?
It's usually a car accident.
And are they usually driving sedans, SUVs?
That I don't have the data on. I'm not sure what kind of vehicle they're driving. That would be interesting to find out. We can get that data from our client. So
Because like one idea that's popping up right now is like, let's say we're gonna go car accident. You have like a general theme, like you have like I'd be curious to know like the same ad, but the hook has a Toyota, Ford, Nissan. Like what resonates them? I don't know if that's even possible to show brand name cars, but seeing if there's a particular car, maybe like 80% of the vehicles are Toyotas. So you plan 5 different Toyota models within the sedan lineup, and I'd almost try to see how can you communicate exactly what the person experienced in an advertisement, like exact same thing. Because if people are seeing, if you're showing a Tesla or electric car in there, I'm sure that wouldn't resonate with this target audience.
Right. Yeah, I know for instance on our auto finance campaigns, trucks for whatever resonate better than sedans with people. We have a higher conversion rate with trucks. So um, that's a good idea. We haven't looked into that, but I will find that data um, and see, if the model car actually matters. Um, we do know that like a lot of people actually aren't so much concerned with getting money for their injuries. They're more concerned about getting their car repaired in a timely manner because they need to get to work and they don't have transport and all of that kind of stuff. So like we've been going more on getting my car repaired fast angle. And then also I got this huge settlement check as like the end hook, but we bring them in with like, I got my car repaired in like 2 days after my car accident or whatever.
Interesting.
You would think like a 6-figure settlement would like really drive conversions, but it's actually the car repair.
Right, because a car can get them other places outside of work, right? To pick up kids
Exactly.
from school, they probably can't afford daycare, so they're probably the ones picking people up and dropping them off. Um, is there a common place that these people are working? Are they working like gig economy where they need their car to drive, or
I I feel like it's more 9 to 5. We did some preliminary segmentation analysis um, through one of these like ISP segment tools, and we found that like our biggest hit was cosmetologists were closing deals more than any other job for whatever reason. I don't know how we like target cosmetologists that have been in car accidents. I feel like that would be too much, but it's something we did discover out of like 3,000 signed retainers.
what do cosmetologists do?
They're like hairstylists. They work in like nail salons and things like that.
Do they typically have clients then? They're people that have clients.
Yes, they do have clients.
Got it. So another idea that's popping up is like, well, what other services, like barbers, for example, people that have like go, people that book to have a haircut, barbers have to be on time, they have a schedule pre-booked for them. I don't know
Right.
if there's a
Some
pattern emerging here, but like if
possibly
something,
like trades work, like plumbers, electricians, things like that, like skilled labor.
yeah, potentially, like people that have booked calendars that they don't necessarily control, somebody books for them. And in that case, right, like then you like once you ideate kind of some potential things, you have the data where you can cross-check this, but um, you can do a general skilled labor concept, but then you don't necessarily know if it would work. But if you do a theme around skilled labor and you can at least articulate some of those points, you can play on like plumber, electrician, um, home repair, like general contractor, and see which one resonates with the market.
Okay, that's a great idea.
But and how are the people that work from home? Have you ever had any cases there, like people that might have less income, like let's say a customer service person, but um, they don't necessarily need their car?
Uh, I don't really have any data on that, but I can find out. Um, that's interesting because I haven't really thought about like the jobs that people are holding, because car accidents can happen to anybody, right? But we are seeing a propensity for them to sign the contracts more often if they are, if they're servicing an individual and have to be somewhere. So I wonder, that's a good question, whether if they can work from home like us, are they really worried about getting their car repaired in a timely manner since they don't need it as badly.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like as a media buyer, like if a car breaks down, like, I mean, you're just gonna do your stuff from a coffee shop across the street. Like you don't need to leave unless you have a particular thing within the family. But if you're living in a city, like you don't need the car, you just need a computer.
Yeah.
Now, if it was flipped, right? Like let's say one of our computers got busted, like we're gonna solve it as soon as possible. But if it's a car, it's not an urgent thing. So
Yeah, exactly.
so yeah, it's kind of like the inversion tactic. Like instead of thinking who do you serve, is like who don't you serve? And by thinking of who isn't typically a good customer, it leads you to people that are good customers versus always thinking like that's the kind of angle to go down. Okay.
Now, would you use any of this with your targeting as iterations, or would you just try to handle it through the creative?
For
Like I know
target,
I know Facebook wants us to broad target, they're like pushing that. So we've been trying to do it. But I always used to use targeting. I'm getting away from it now, but I don't know if it's not necessarily including like cosmetologists, but maybe excluding remote workers from the targeting might be something that could be helpful.
excluding, you're saying?
Yeah, so like if you excluded remote workers, people that don't need their cars for work, and not, save on those impressions.
Yeah, the risk there might be a higher CPM, just like reaching more people might cost you more with an exclusion. But
Right.
I would almost only test that if this hypothesis works and it leads to like there's good signal, then I would see like audience I would test last. It'd always be creative, then copy, then targeting, because the broad has gotten so strong.
Okay.
Especially if you call out in the copy or in the creative, like the specific keywords of cosmetologist or plumber or um, hair barber, like if you call people out specifically, Facebook does a pretty good job serving that niche.
Okay.
All right, so typically like I'm gonna look at it from your shoes. Everyone gets ideas, right? And it's like, well, where do you go from here? Like what's like, here's a strategy, here's an idea. Like where are you where do you feel like the next step would be? Like, do you have to convey this to the team? Like how do you make this actionable? I guess that's my next question here.
So, I try, like, we discuss angles on our weekly calls, but I give them the freedom to explore their own creativity because they're actually making the creatives themselves. So, I'm not sure if it would be better to give them this concept and then possibly work through this with them on the call so they get these ideas and angles and then they can run with them, or if to say like, hey, these are some things that I think are working, you should try this. Like that's my rock and hard place, is like not over managing them and allowing them to have that freedom of movement to be creative.
Yeah, the best thing I can share on like working with creatives is instead of telling them what to do, just don't tell them what not to do, and they do a good job of following that container. But creative people hate being told what to do because it stunts their creativity.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, you're on the you got it right there. I guess let me rephrase my question. It's along the lines of um, we can keep going down the route of like more ideation, or we can make this pretty actionable so your team can have 5 concepts like with the brief planned out where it's like instead of communicating it, they can just understand how to structure the creative tests in a way, like make it very actionable versus this is like theoretical still.
Right. I guess let's go the actionable route, and then I can give that to them and see how they do next week with it. And then I'd have some data to report back.
Cool. Okay. So me just see here. By the way, Lucas, I know you're kind of still here. Do you have any questions or any feedback for now, or any thoughts?
I'm just following, getting some insights. So continue, guys.
Cool. So I'll kind of break down like what the process usually will look like. I am missing some information, so that's why I might need some more questions, but
Sure.
we'll usually kind of do this. So we didn't fully finish this step, like this is kind of where we're at, which like a brain dump where, let's say I'm gonna work on a new product. Well, how do you understand the product well enough without ever using it? Typically the reviews are the best indicator, where if you just take you export CSV of all the customer reviews. This is particularly for like a direct to consumer product, lower ticket. If you can export the reviews into an AI tool and ask it to categorize reasons why people are buying, rather than asking the owner of the company why people are buying. Generally, people have patterns of their purchases. And that's kind of like the brain dump, where it's like you take the product description or product imagery, which is typically made by the marketing team, so they have their bias there. Then you take the reviews and data from the customers, so you have those two sides, and you consolidate them, and you find the patterns. That's where the combine comes in. So that's kind of like, I'm asking you the questions of like, you know, the data, you know,
Right.
let me pull from your end. And then from the customer side, like, part of that is like if you have call recordings or however you get data in, I can give you a prompt and like how do you siphon everything, but eventually we're going to combine it. Let's say we came down to it's like the combination for one idea is like people that serve people in person. And then you break down like cosmetologist, skilled labor, maybe a teacher, for example, people that have to show up in person somewhere. That's a pattern that emerged. I'd call that like a level 1 or layer 1. Now I want to understand the next layer. This is a continuation of the brain dump, which is, well, what's in common between these ones? Like you mentioned, like socio-economic levels. Maybe it could be, feel free to like just chime in. Like I'm just trying to
Yeah.
break down another layer here. And usually like that third layer,
Well, I guess in person jobs, you know, they have to be there in person.
Mhm.
I would say generally they would be, well, I guess paycheck to paycheck is more of a socioeconomic level.
They usually go like on the next layer. And usually this layer is where you're going to get your keywords for calling out people. If people, it's like, how do you tell people they're paycheck to paycheck without telling them they're paycheck to paycheck? Because you can't just call people out like on income levels. But if you call someone paycheck to paycheck, you're pretty much calling them out that they have no savings, which is what most of America has, is nothing. So if there's like the 5 ways I can make a hook is like, what 5 ways can you communicate that to a cosmetologist? Like, how are they currently talking about this in Reddit threads? Most of the answers are going to be on the comment sections of Reddit, YouTube, Instagram. Like, how are these people talking about their current life situation? Give the words back to them. And that's where this is discovered.
Right. No, I've tried to use Reddit to kind of find some like pain points and things like that to build a really nice psychography. But for like car accidents, there's not really a lot of threads about like I was in a car accident, or I tried to hire a personal injury attorney. I'm not really finding that, and you don't really see negative or positive reviews so much on attorneys. It's not like a product that someone's buying and they're giving a review. And that's what I've always found a little difficult with like service based, especially in the legal service industry, is where do I find people talking about their experiences with those?
Hey, Paco, do
Yeah.
you have access to attorney's calls or something like that?
So we were doing some pay-per-call stuff, and our data we do have access to. We use Ringba as well, so we
Mm.
were able to hear those calls, but we've stopped really running the pay-per-call traffic. Um, it, it just like wasn't backing out as well for us, but we're trying to get back into it. So that may be a good way, just to even just run it so we can hear what's going on and kind of find those concerns.
Yeah. And what about um your generated leads for attorneys, right?
Mhm.
So do you have access? I mean, does those attorneys record those calls in some way?
They do, but we don't have access unless it comes through our system. Our client may give us access to that, but we would have to ask, and it would probably have to go through their legal team and all of that kind of stuff, because they're attorney-client privilege. Now, we may be able to get access to the sales calls since they're not actually with attorneys, so that might be a good solution.
See, that's an interesting question. Like, where do you find people talking about their experience for services or with services? Because if you can solve for that, you can solve for many of these questions and problems. Because I don't have an answer, right? Like if people aren't doing survey collection or they're not recording the calls and sharing it, well, where do you get the data? Like where do you
Can
pull
you,
it
for example, can you afford to ask more open questions in your funnel, in your surveys?
We try to like limit our funnels and just optimize for conversions there. So I wouldn't want to like lower our conversion rate to get more like data from them there. Um, I think the only place would probably be from the client calls, honestly. I mean, we have the same problem with our auto finance funnel. I mean, people don't go into forums and talk about how great their auto finance loan was, nobody does that. So where do
Where do
you
they talk
find that?
about that though? Because they talk about this somewhere, right? Like a framework that I think about is like what conversations happen at the Olive Garden? Like you're at dinner with your family, like what conversations happen in that medium? So where do people talk about these types of topics?
That I don't know. I don't know. I mean, to be able to find that I think it's difficult. We were really big in Camp Lejeune, and we had the same problem there. It's like, where do you find someone talking about being at Camp Lejeune and the contaminated water? I
What
mean,
is it called again? Camp Lejeune?
Camp Lejeune, it was a class action lawsuit. It was a mass tort offer. It was pretty big for like all of last year and some of this year. It was like $1 billion settlement that was going out. Attorneys were paying like crazy for it.
So was that localized in like a particular city?
Yeah, so the military base was, I believe, in North Carolina, but they covered it up for 30 years or something like that. So anybody that lived in the city or was stationed at that base in 30 years was entitled to money.
Okay.
So, um, but the commercials were all over TV. They're everywhere.
I'm assuming people got direct mail that lived in that radius. They probably got commercials that lived in that
Yeah.
radius.
Anybody in the military, I'm sure, got a mailer, and we were targeting them and everybody else was targeting them. We took all of our old 3M earplug data, and use that as like lookalike audiences to target people in the military that might have been within Camp Lejeune.
Well, the question then becomes, where do people in those towns congregate outside of church, right? Because people
Right.
definitely talk at a church. Outside of it, where else does that happen? And if you can find where that happens, and that's where all those conversations are had, because I'm sure they're happening on a Facebook, local Facebook thing, right? Like when the community, like something happens, people post about it. I know there's like
Maybe
platforms,
next,
neighbors next door or something,
yeah, next door.
but that might be, yeah, I don't know who uses that. But it's like, where are those conversations happening? Like, what group chat are they happening in?
Right. So maybe it's more getting more granular than just like searching a thread, maybe having to join something to find that information.
Yeah, perhaps. Maybe it's even asking, like, maybe a good way to, if you have the data somehow to follow up on, is from the people that you got in this case, like, where have they communicated with others? Like, have you talked to anybody, like maybe collecting that form question of where else have you talked to someone about this before? Maybe they're gonna say, you know, on my Facebook, in a Facebook group where? Facebook group in my local city, you know, maybe like the Denver, official Denver group, and it's got like 112,000 people in there, and that's where like the people go instead of Reddit, perhaps.
Right.
But anyway, this is kind of going off tangent here, but this is an interesting point. I guess if your team can somehow solve that question of like, where do people talk about the service, then you can enter the conversation and find out.
Yeah, because I think that's one of our biggest issues with coming up with new angles is like finding these pain points that we can create a solution for in our advertisements.
Hmm. Let me see here. Because my immediate thing here is like, just let me read some reviews. Let me just pull some data. Let me try to like find a pattern. But because guessing is one thing, but then it's like the guesses have to be built on top of some sort of good foundation, and I don't have that foundation within the service side to kind of connect the dots. But
Yeah, we've tried using ChatGPT and like it's okay, it's kind of generic and the responses it gets. It's like, oh, well, you know, they suffer from PTSD from their car accident. Well, maybe they don't. Maybe it was a fender bender and they just need their car repaired, but they have a little bit of whiplash, and that we've tried the PTSD angle and it does not resonate with our consumers. So, it's and it doesn't even bring up the car repair. We got that from the head of sales at our client's office, saying that that's what they really hear.
okay, here's another maybe place to look is, well, customers are the ones going to the car repair centers, right?
Hmm.
To communicate with like the cashiers or the repairmen. So they have good insights as to what customers are venting about, most likely. I'm assuming, because customers will come there and they're gonna say that they need the car as soon as possible and they need this and they need that. They're very demanding because that's the service provider for them. So I wonder if those people, like maybe looking in that form of like car repairmen, like what is it like being a car repairman? Like what do people come complaining about? Common things there. Because that's like the last node of communication. Because once the car is fixed, they're done, right?
Yeah, pretty much, unless they're waiting on their settlement from the attorney.
And usually when people are closing up something, they like to vent because they know it's coming towards an end and they'll let everything off their chest. And it's
Right.
usually gonna be those people. Hmm. me see Reddit or something there. Like mechanics, that's what I'd be looking for. I don't know what the thread here would be of like what query to put in, but
Maybe like dealing with car accident mechanics or yeah, insurance claims. Insurance claim repairs or insurance claim mechanics.
is this a person that's typically involved in the process, an auto appraiser?
It is, the insurance companies will send their own appraisers out to see what the damage is. And then generally they give a low ball offer. The attorneys step in and they basically counteract that offer and negotiate a higher settlement based on injuries and everything else. Most of the time, the insurance companies will just settle so they don't have to go to court. And that's what they bank on. Yeah,
Not sure if that would lead to anything, but it's more of like,
going off the beaten path to kind of find those problems.
because
Seems
people
like.
are talking somewhere, like there's something somewhere, it's just. It might not be in front of us, but it could be in front of us at the same time, it's just what keywords are people using? Which would then stem from like, who are those people? Maybe you can add in like, people say, hey, I'm a cosmetologist, I just got into an issue, and like you type in as if you're that person onto Google and then see what yields the results.
Okay,
That's the thing to solve once you kind of have, like, you've defined the people, for example, there's a pattern there. But then the pain to solve for would be. Like, why do they want to submit the form? Which you've kind of answered here.
so,
Fine.
getting their car repaired and getting a large check,
Yep,
which I think plays both into the economic levels and the in-person jobs, right? Because they don't have a lot of money, so a large check seems great to them. And they have to get to work to continue to pay their bills because they can't miss a paycheck.
also, I know people typically in a 9 to 5 corporate job have a certain quota of vacation or sick days that they don't want to lose. I don't know if that's a play here, but
It could be, definitely could be.
so I'd be almost looking like, what are those things, right? Like, you have the need to show up for work, or like what do they need the money for? Is to pay for like or I guess rather, why do they need the car to pay for what, like their everyday rent,
Childcare.
car payments, childcare? Because if someone's car gets damaged, they're still paying for the car payments, right?
Yeah.
And I know car payments right now are ridiculous with the interest rates, so people are getting screwed over with like $600-700 car payments a month they can't afford already. So now if they're paying for it for a car they don't have, they need it as soon as possible.
Right.
And I would just kind of list those like 5 main things, for example, and then you have like their age range of like 35 to 50. Those people typically are paying childcare, or it's like college tuition might be another thing in play here. And I would play on like one concept could be playing on the socioeconomic side of what are calling out specific things. So one ad is just focus on rent in the hook, and the rest of it is your general concept. One ad just focus on like not wasting monthly car payments, another one on making sure they can pay for childcare, another one on being able to afford college tuition or not missing a payment there.
And so when you're doing these concepts, it would be one concept per ad set, correct? Or would it be one concept per ad?
One concept per ad set. Each
Okay.
concept has 5 different angles within it, sub angles.
Okay.
So if you would like, how would you categorize this? Like, what would you say that is? Like these 4 points, like what would they fall under?
I would put that under like financial obligations.
There's your concept. And you might be missing content here. For example, you might not have people specifically showing that they can't pay rents. So if you have a winning hook or winning concept or visual that works, I would just lay over things that can explicitly show that it's rent related. Maybe call out the problem that people are having, such as like in a car accident and not able to pay your monthly rent. I don't know, but you call people out, so when they're scrolling, they identify that.
Right. And would you do that in the hook or would you do that in the ad copy?
Hook and hook first, for sure.
Hook first? Okay. Yeah, that's a lot easier to iterate on than like changing the copy as well too. So, okay.
Yeah, and then like now let's say that this concept wins in theory, right? But the best one was rent. Well, what part of rent do people resonate with? Like, where is that fee, for example? Is it like, where are they getting buried somewhere, you know? I don't know what that is, but if you can call out go even deeper on that. Like, if you find that rent resonated, it's like townhomes, condos, apartments,
Mortgage.
government housing, mortgage. And this is like that brain dump phase where you just list all the possible things, combine things that can be combined, and then you prioritize your 5 best combinations. And again, now you go from rent broad to rent specific, and it becomes a different thing. Like, for example, I live in a condo. So it's like if you tell me if I got in an accident, you're like, make sure your house payments are there. I'm not thinking that I have a house. I have a condo. I don't have a house.
Right. So that
You live
doesn't
in a
resonate.
house.
That wouldn't immediately resonate with you.
Right.
Okay. That
And
makes
it's just,
sense.
once you find that particular language that people are speaking about, then you just give it right back to them. Kind of like the empathy side, like heard and understood people. It's like you understand their situation better than they understand their situation. And then they trust you just because you're speaking to them. Like all these other guys are telling me about my house. I don't have a house, I have a condo. I'm finally being heard. Like this will help me. But it's just
So now when you're like creating your story angles, do you generally speak from the first person or do you speak from like third?
We test both. First person stories typically work better if the creator inside of that story relates to the people that are buying. If I have a story of like a male selling supplements, like a protein powder, females will not resonate with that from that first person story because it's a different body composition. But if it's females to females, males to males, it works. So that's another thing worth testing. I would test that. Like once you have a winning thing, like if you have a creator talking in this perspective, I would break that down. Whole new concept. But
Okay.
because then you can go into like first person. And you can do the same thing with females.
Right.
Again, assuming you have the content, it's just that's always a constraint here. But like those ideas, like you just open that up and then you do the same thing for third person. And it's just like you'll see the patterns of like what things will start working, what won't be working. But moving back to your first question, I think where do you document these things is the crucial piece, right? Like how do you,
Right.
yeah, so. Okay. But this is like basically the process of like new concepts. This is like the iteration side. But
Okay.
I only think about iterations once I have the winning concept or directionality. I don't think about all these things like ahead of time because like if I break these things down too much, like in apartments works, like I don't know what if there's a better like category versus specific housing.
Right. And that's a lot of things to test when you don't even know if
Yeah.
rent is going to work. It may be car payments that work, right? So
Yeah,
like, why even worry about breaking it down further until you know it works?
exactly. So you go high level and then within 3 weeks, because if you're testing every Monday, within 3 weeks, you'll be already down to this. You'll be here already, you know.
Right.
And you'll know pretty soon, pretty quick if like which is leading and then where you can lead on, like, you know, why are people's car payments an obligation? And just asking why, you list those reasons why. And then those are your call outs for the ad.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
Like this whole process, like I should be able to show my guys this and they should be able to, we like during the calls, break this down, come up with their angles. And then once we know how to document it, then I think we can really start seeing where things are working and then we can start iterating there and going further and further down. But this is exactly what I was looking for today. This is great.
cool. Yeah, I'll compile that sheet that I have with clients that I document things. I'll share that with you in the chat, or I'll share that with everyone in the chat. It'll just be blank. And I'll
Okay.
put some mock data in there. The document like documenting the findings, I'll also create that because that's something I've been thinking about. And then I'll share that with you guys as well. The process you can record. Obviously, I'll share the recording and then you could share that with the team, but yeah, I hope that was helpful.
It was super helpful. I really appreciate it.
Cool.
Yeah, the rest of the week, I'm gonna be putting this together so I can like present it to the team and be like, this is what we want to try to start doing, and this is how we need to do it.
What's the biggest takeaway, I guess, from this? Because I just kind of went in a lot of little tangents, but what's on top of mind?
I mean, I think the brain dump was really like the best thing because like we do a lot of these things, but like we, I think it's just like we just throw stuff against the wall and we're not like literally writing it down and like showing the levels. And like for me visually, that was extremely helpful to understand that like, okay, yes, we're looking at you know, I know that cosmetologists are great for back-end closes, but like what other characteristics do cosmetologists share with other job types, right? And now I know like, okay, now maybe I need to look at skilled labor or people that are have to be somewhere. You know, they have to have a 9 to 5. Now that's a huge concept I can explore. And like looking at things like that, I think will really help us find new angles and be able to iterate better and figure everything out. Especially we plug into Experian, so we're able to append all that data, and it should be pretty easy for us to find out some of those commonalities between the people that are closing on the back end, and then continue to do that with everything we do. So it's huge.
Cool. Yeah, let me put that together for you guys. This was like I think that's a common pattern that I've gotten feedback from everyone, which is just like the brain dump process is helpful because it's not just it's a kind of like a controlled chaos in a way. There's like a randomness element, but it's like very logical. But the messiness is like, where do you go from here? Like, what's the next step? You have a team that can implement this, but a lot of people don't have that team. So it's like, how do you chunk the thing down so it's super, super actionable?
Yeah.
And it seems like you're doing this already, so it should be quite easy to implement. But yeah, most people don't have that process.
Yeah, it's you know, for me, it was just kind of it's as I'm building the team, figuring out like how to make it all work together for everyone because you know it was always easy for me to just like do it for myself. But now that I'm trying to like show other people how to do it and get like a standardized process that they can all work within and still give them the freedom to be creative within that process was really where I was getting stuck. It's like, how do you not stifle someone's creativity, but also demand that they do so many creative things and have a process to their creativity?
For
You know,
sure.
I think the brain dump, because there is that chaos in it and it's just people getting ideas out and finding commonalities and patterns, it doesn't make it feel restrictive. Like, you know, it's still letting that creative freedom happen and gives people the opportunity to answer the questions with their own answers and then go from there. If I'm just asking, well, what do you guys think? Why is this happening? You know, and putting that down for them, then it's really it's all their answers. I'm just helping them get there, like you did with me. So I think that's really great.
Yeah, think of yourself as a conductor of an orchestra. You're not the player. You're just like pointing a direction for somebody to just create, and then you just type for them, and then you unlock a new idea for them that they didn't realize, and then they keep going down the thread.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, any questions? I guess for me, it'll be helpful too, because like, again, we're thinking about the same thing now. So if you had a roadblock anywhere in the process, just like write me, because I'll be thinking about the process as well, like from a SOP standpoint, and then maybe I have something created I can just give to you. If not, if it's aligned with what I'm thinking about internally, I'll just create that because I'll see it as like a common pattern emerging.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. And if you want to meet up for a coffee or something in Denver while you're here, let me know.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool. I'm gonna be in SD, maybe like well, Friday I'm leaving for SDs, but I'll be back the week after, so maybe like Monday or Tuesday next week.
For sure. Yeah, I'm on the way to SSM right before there.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Cool. Yeah, just ping me.
Will do. Very cool.
Sweet. Anything else, guys?
That's all I had for today. Lucas, do you have anything?
No, sir. I'm good. Taking my notes.
What's your biggest takeaway?
Of, I mean, I did get a lot of insights, insider insights from the industry from Paco. Those were great. And I really like the process, like getting those types. It's I mean, it's real that Paco has his team. It's gonna be like more straightforward for him to implement everything. But I'm kind of thinking how to do this by myself, right? Or maybe with a couple of collaborators that I do have on the creative side of things. So I have a lot of things to think during these days.
When you're saying to do this, are you talking about actually making the creative or doing the brain dump process?
Making the creative actually, but doing the brainstorm process is more like myself probably. Yeah, at the moment. Hopefully hopefully I get to the point that I have a couple of minds to rely on and to work side by side. It's always better.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thanks for the feedback, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for the time today, man. This was great.
For sure. Hope to see you in the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.